And over the years, I have been influenced by a lot of creators. And so, before I begin, I just want to have a little moment of silence for one of the greatest artists who ever lived, who passed away last night. His name is Akira Toriyama. Who knows Akira Toriyama?
I know.
He's the creator of Dragon Ball Z.
Ooh,
How important was this artist to our world?
Super important.
Very important. So I just want to thank him for everything that he created. What an amazing person to come into this world to share Dr. Slump, Dragon Ball Z, Chrono Quest, and on the list goes. So that was pretty amazing. As you can see, I have been a fan of comic books, and as a kid, this is me when I was about 12 years old, and on this day, my mom let me draw on the wall in the kitchen. So, who recognizes the characters that I drew back then, way back then? Anybody recognize those characters?
I don't.
Nobody recognizes them?
I'm assuming from Dragon Ball Z.
No. Who's that guy? That's Spider-Man wearing the symbiote costume, and then Peter Parker realized this thing's making me go insane. And so he goes up to a clock tower, the sound of the bell makes the symbiote go crazy, it escapes, it heads over to Eddie Brock, and then it becomes who? Venom, that's right. And then who's this guy here? That's the guy from the Fantastic Four. This is the ever-loving, blue-eyed Thing. Yeah. Not a part of Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, you're right. Stay back.
Wait, quick.
I'm 55. Give me
This guy was created in the 60s. Come on now.
I think that's an original Simpsons shirt.
And this is just to show you how old I am. Not much younger than you, my friend. This is an original Simpsons t-shirt.
Beautiful.
Came out season 1. I remember I asked my mom, por favor, mama, llévame a Spencer's. Necesito esta playera. I need this t-shirt. So she took me to Spencer's and gave me
one of my favorite stores too. I miss it. Spencer's.
So I have been making comic books for quite some time. And as a kid, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and Juarez, which is in Mexico. And so I grew up right on the border. And for me, both of those cities were just like one gigantic city. In Juarez, mi mamá y su familia trabajaban en el mercado Cuauhtémoc. And at the mercado, mi abuelo vendía Velvet Elvis paintings, vendía zarapes, sombreros. Mi abuelita vendía hierbas, velas con símbolos de dinero, de corazones o velas negras. Vendía mi tío Chato mango enchilado, all sorts of things like that. So I grew up in a mercado, and then on the El Paso side, that's where my dad was from, and my dad was a janitor at Greyhound, which was a bus terminal, and then he became a door-to-door salesman. And so my artwork is influenced by the part of the world that I grew up in, English and Spanish, and they feature animal characters, animals that you would find living right on the frontera. And so ever since I was a kid, I started making up characters that were a combination of my American pop culture influence, like The Simpsons, like the Flintstones, later on like Dragon Ball Z, which is Japanese influence obviously, combined with my Mexican upbringing. And so I started creating, these are all characters that I created when I was a little kid that I then redrew into my latest book. But I created luchadores like Dr. Feo. So that's Dr. Feo. That I created my own unicorn, which was based on the burro that my abuelita Catalina had. And this is my burro corn. So you can see there's a stalk of corn coming out of its forehead.
I love it.
I drew cucarachas because, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
every time I would turn on the lights in my apartment, cucarachas all over the place. So I started drawing cucarachas all the time.
That's
This is
great.
my little cowboy cucaracha. My hermano Ruben had two chihuahuas, Beto y Cuca. And so these are my chihuahuas, my gallos. And one of the very first characters I created was the punk nopal. And a little something about the punk nopal. I hide the punk nopal in basically every single World of Vamos book that I illustrate. Sometimes I draw him small and very hard to find. Sometimes he's easy to find, so just like that.
What is Nepal?
What's a nopal?
We don't know.
It's
Is
a
it cactus?
It's a cactus, yeah.
All right,
It's a
excellent.
cactus. So I started making books, my own books, when I was in my late teens. Maybe your art teacher definitely will. But my first publisher was Kinko's. Who knows what is Kinko's?
It was a copy center.
A copy center. So I started making my first books using the copy machine, and I would make horror books, like Bloody Horror. I mean, how cool! I was like, I'm gonna make a horror magazine. What should I call it? Bloody Horror. And then I would make. I always make books about Mexican characters, and so this is my supernatural western that I wrote and illustrated. I called it Mexican manga. Mexican manga. Manga is a Japanese comic book. And so you could actually see that you would read this book from right to left. So I drew it in the right to left format, just like a Japanese comic book. And this book is called Cowboy Boy. One of these days, I plan to bring this book back, and now as an adult, I really think the title's cool. What do you think? Do you think it would?
Come on, boy.
Yeah, okay, cool. I ask my librarian friends all the time, will this book be checked out? So this is Cowboy Boy issue number 1. It's a supernatural western. The very first villain in this book was a chupacabra, and there was going to be Las Momias de Guanajuato in it. There was going to be La Llorona. I had this plan just to make this entire monster universe, but I was only 20, and in my 20s, I would just let life lead me in whatever direction. So I would start projects, and then I would move on to the next project, and on to the next one, and on to the next one. And honestly, I'm really happy that I did that, because when you're a young artist, it's really important to not be so quick to define what kind of artist you are. Be
Nice.
open to opportunities.
Stephanie, you hear that back there?
Be open to opportunities. Sometimes, like somebody would say, that's a really cool book. Would you be interested in designing a menu for me? I've never designed a menu. But do you think I said no? No, I said, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Challenge.
That's
Yeah.
a really cool menu. Do you think you could design a rock and roll poster for me? I can do that. Then I would say, hey, can you design our logo for our new Art Beat Festival? I can do that. And then that led to murals, and on it went. But one thing that I will say to you is, if, this is me in my 20s, if you love something, share what you love with people. So if you love Akira Toriyama, let people know that you love Akira Toriyama. If you love manga, music, science, history, whatever it is that you're interested in, share it, share your passion of that thing with other people. The moment you start doing that, you start meeting other people who love that thing as much as you do. And when that starts happening, you'll begin to collaborate with people, and you'll start making interesting projects together. And that's when the magic starts. Because believe it or not, some of these people that you collaborate with at a young age, they're going to grow up. And suddenly, they're going to find themselves in positions where they can ask you to do things for where they're working. So I've had people that ended up being editors at publishing houses, and they never forgot the day when we were in our 20s and we were making projects together, and they called me up. Would you be interested in, I remember that cool trippy stuff you used to draw. Would you be interested in drawing a cover for me? Absolutely. And now that comes with a paycheck, so that's pretty awesome. So another thing that I always tell people, this is a page from my book, Vamos, Let's Go Read, which is the 11th book in my World of Vamos series. It's a simple page, but it's an important page because everyone on this table is working on their own comic book. And I always tell people, everyone everywhere has their own origin story. Everyone in this room comes from a unique place. Everyone has a unique background. And it's important to share where you're from with other people. And here's why it's important. When I was a kid, growing up in El Paso, I was made to feel embarrassed about a lot of the things that made me who I am. I would show up, my mom would make me a burrito, and I would show up and all the kids had sandwiches and the kids would make fun of me for eating delicious burritos. Well, what the heck is up with that? So I started getting intimidated, and I would wrap them up with a napkin and eat them. I would be ashamed of speaking Espanol, and so I stopped speaking Espanol. And here's the thing: all of those things, we should be very proud of them because our families come from far away to make better futures for us and our future families. And so be proud of where you're from, share your stories with other people, and again, thanks to my books, my Vamos, Let's Go Read books, I have won 4 Pura Belpre awards. I have won a New York Times Best Illustrated Award. And I have found that those things that I was ashamed of, that I was made to feel ashamed of as a kid, are things that a lot of people love and enjoy. All of those little things that make me who I am, I make people laugh and make people happy. So share who you are. Here's a lot of cool things that I hide in my books. Those are some of the things that made me here. Calimán is right there. Who knows Calimán? He's an original Mexican superhero. Popeye.
Okay.
El Gordo. Oh, there's a little El Chavo del Ocho. Who knows that? Yeah. So yeah, that's another page. I'll skip that. When I was a kid, I thought that every artist in the world used these pens to draw. That was the pen I thought everybody used. You know why? Because it was the only pen I knew existed. That was the only pen I could find as a kid growing up. And so I taught myself how to draw with these pens. This was my pen of choice. I used to always be on the lookout for them, and sometimes I would find them on the street. I would find red ones, blue ones, green ones, black ones. I would find them with interesting business names on them, like, mira, Chicos Tacos. I'll keep this one. Lupe's Tamales. I hope my mom takes me there later today. And so I kept them all, and that's what I started to draw with. This is this was a page that I was drawing when I received a call from a librarian who lived in Portland. Remember those books that I was self-publishing at Kinko's? Cowboy Boy and those? So I would send them out into the world. I would send them to artists. I would send them to editors. I would send them to people that I hoped would hire me to make books. And somehow, some way, I live in Boston, my book Cowboy Boy ended up in the lap of Kathy Camper way out in Portland, Oregon. And she loved the fact that I was making books about young Mexican kids. And she was an outreach librarian back then, and she would go out with her library bus and try to get books into the hands of kids who didn't have access to books. A lot of the kids she was reaching were Latino kids. And so she realized that a lot of these kids loved books about lowriders. Who here knows what a lowrider is? Cars that go low and slow, bajito y suavecito. You know the kind, right?
Yeah, y'all
And
know
so-
lowriders, man? Come on.
Nobody knew. What's going on? And anyway, so she asked me if I'd be interested in working on her on a project that she was thinking of titling Low Riders in Space. And as she was describing it, I was doodling this on a sheet of notebook paper. And little did I know that this drawing that I was doodling on notebook paper would end up being the cover underneath the dust jacket of the book that we finally published together, published by Chronicle Books, my first book.
Which is available at the Lake Worth Library.
Ah,
Available at
cool.
the Lake Worth
Nice.
Library. Another thing, this drawing on notebook paper is in the collection of a guy whose name you might recognize. It's in the collection of a guy named George Lucas.
Yeah, there we go.
Who knows who George Lucas is? Who is he?
Yeah. Luke.
You don't remember?
Luke, I'm your father.
George Lucas is the creator of Star Wars.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, so he bought this from me. He bought every single page of the first Lowrider book from me. He bought all of my sketchbooks for the creation of Lowriders in Space from me. And honestly, it's one of the proudest moments of my life to receive a phone call from not George Lucas. He doesn't talk to anybody, but from George Lucas's team of people.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice.
Things that I love a lot about comic books and drawing, especially black and white drawing, is that it can be accessible to anyone. You can start making flyers and posting them on telephone poles to get your messages out there. You can make a book out of one single sheet of paper by folding it in half. How many pages would your book be then? Nope.
8.
4. Yeah. All you need is that machine there, the zine machine, a copy machine, to start making your books. You have 2 sheets of paper, you have an 8-page book, right? Your 1 sheet of paper can contain both your first page and your last page. Pobrecito el Toro, look at him trying to fold his magazine there. That's El Toro.
How would you bind them? Would you just staple, or
Yeah,
would just
you could use a staple, yeah.
How do you usually bind yours?
What's that?
How would you bind them back in the day?
So I use the book stapler.
Okay.
Yeah, so I actually, most copy machine places have a book stapler that you can use. It's a staple with a longer indent, so you can put the paper in there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have one here,
Nope.
but you should.
We have it at the library.
They have one at the library.
Ooh, yeah.
I highly recommend getting a stapler,
Right.
just a book stapler, so that the kids can make their own books and pass them around. And the moment you start sharing your work, the smaller that hard to penetrate world will become, because suddenly people will recognize what you are doing. Grapadora, as it's called. I'll skip that. Anyways, vamos, let's go eat. Vamos, let's cross the bridge. Training day, tag team. Let me show you the names of some of these characters. That's Bernabe. That was my dog when I was a kid growing up. That's Little Lobo. That's Kooky Dookie.
He's the rooster.
That's Cocorocho, la cucaracha. There's Cocorocho again. So this is pretty much the team. And then I have this is part of the same universe, my luchadores. These are the El Toro and Friends books. That's El Toro. That's La Oink Oink. These are my Cocorocho board books. There's the Burro Porn, Cocorocho, the Punk Nopal. This is the Team Up book. These are the rest of the luchadores. How many of you have ever heard of the animal, the jackalope? So 2 people, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
All right, my dad has jackalopes in his library at his house,
So
up on the wall.
ever since I was a kid, I would go to Walgreens and I would see postcards with a little bunny, a little rabbit with antlers, and I would turn it around and I would say, "Oh, that's a jackalope. That's
I
awesome.
love it.
I love the jackalope." So this is my jackalope character
I love
in my
it.
book, and his name is Jack A. Lopez. That's Jackie Lopez.
I was so confused by that as a
An inside joke. This is Liz. She's a lizard. Her name's Lizarda. When I was a kid, you know, the white people would come to the mercado, and they would think that just taking a word in English and adding an A or an O to it would turn it into Spanish. So this is Lizarda. Lizarda. This is Croak, the toad. I love sapos. This is, again, La Oink Oink, El Toro. And this is Armadillo.
Yeah.
So, I love creating these characters. I love drawing them. This is from the book Tacos Today. I found out when I was working on this book, I had planned to name the book Taco Tuesday. But at the time, Taco Tuesday was a trademarked phrase. And so the legal department came back to me and said, you can't use that title. The only time that this guy, the guy who owned the trademark, would go after people is if he saw they were successfully using the phrase. And I thought to myself, there is no way in heck that I am going to share my book profits with this guy up in South Dakota. So I changed the name to Tacos Today. But look when the story takes place.
Yeah.
Tuesday. Before I did a lot of work that was exhibited in museums and galleries all across the United States. If you look, a long time ago, I was a featured artist in Juxtapose magazine, which was a dream come true because that was one of my favorite magazines growing up as a kid. This is a painting, a self-portrait of me and my family, my mom crossing over to Los Estados Unidos over really rough terrain. And this painting is 4 by 8 feet tall. So 4 feet wide, 8 feet tall. And it hangs in a mansion somewhere in Beverly Hills, of all places, which is kind of sad. I kind of wish I still had it. It's one of the reasons why I don't really care to make fine art anymore, because honestly, I didn't really like the people that I was making artwork for. I really enjoy the communities that I make artwork for in my books, which are people that are basically just like me when I was a kid growing up. People that go to the library, all of the wonderful kids that I get to visit at schools all across the country. And in the fine art world, it's some guy whose name I don't even know who owns this piece out in Beverly Hills somewhere. Although he did pay a pretty penny for it, create a lowrider. And so I told, and this is the introduction of the characters. That's Lupe Impala. When I was a kid in high school, I don't know, I loved creating typeface and just writing either my name or the name of the person I had a crush on over and over in my notebooks using different handwriting styles. And so I really wanted to, in this book, find a way to create that feeling of doodling in the margins of my notebook, you know? How many of you like to doodle in the margins of every single one of your assignments? What? Yeah, same. That's what I do. That's what I still do. Quickly do an aside. When I was a kid growing up, and I've shared my reading list, none of the books that I read as a kid featured Latinos. There were no Latinos in the books that I read. There was nobody named Raul. There was nobody named Lopez, Martinez. There was no desert. There was no Mexican people. There was no Mexican food in any of the books that I read. I read The Great Brain Returns, which is about kids living in Utah. I read John Belair books, which took place in a snowy New England town. All of those books I read and I enjoyed them, but there are no books for Latino kids. And so I wanted to create characters where kids who grew up with Latino families would understand some of the jokes. Look at this guy's hat. Who do you think what influenced that hat? El Chavo del Ocho. Look at Elerio Malaria. When I was a kid, I don't know about you, but I had a grandpa, my abuelito Raúl, he would wear his pants up to here. And I would show up to his house and he was like, ¿Qué hubo, mijo? ¿Cómo estás? Ven para acá. And so I wanted to make a character that was like my abuelito, but also that referenced a part of Mexican American history. And so I based it off of the zoot suit.
Yeah.
And by the way, Mexicans loved wearing this in LA, and the white people living in LA started getting intimidated, and they started to tell them, you know what, guys? It's against the law to wear that suit. Can you believe that? Suddenly they were expressing themselves, finding comfort in their skin. And it intimidated people so much they were like, sorry, you can't wear that clothes anymore, which is a shame. But so that was the influence for Elerio Malaria. And then of course using like an old like Aztec hieroglyph read at the 7-Eleven as a